Good morning for this February 7th post-service discussion. For today, we have Reverend Donna Smith, and we are responding to her latest service um, about universal healing. And so Lillian wanted to go first.
I have so many thoughts and feelings roaming around inside that I guess what I want to say first is thank you so much. Thank you for all the thought that went into that and the beautiful presentation. I hope that anyone hearing this that did not hear that sermon goes back and listens to it twice. I certainly intend to. The part that seems to be resonating within my head at the moment were the three radicals: the forgiveness, the gratitude, and the love. It brought to mind people, places, and things in my world, including myself, that I want my attention now to go to, because some unfinished business. And everything about what you said has just really spurred me to not wanting to leave some of those things unfinished and unsaid, especially the area of forgiveness, but also gratitude. There are so many things I'm grateful for, and it's not something I say often enough. So thank you so much for just bringing that into my forebrain. I will be forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lillian. May I say something?
Oh, please, yes.
I did say something that was incorrect. I had said unforgiveness is necessary because forgiveness blocks you from being. That should have been forgiveness is necessary because unforgiveness blocks you. And
Donna.
so I just wanted to correct that because I don't want you to take that to heart. So,
we forgive you, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and this is something that's been coming up not only in sermons or post-service discussions, but also in AEO, is that in order to talk about difficult things, I think we have to be willing to be clumsy from time to time, you know, and be charitable with each other. So I think we understood your full meaning.
Good, I hope so.
Well, so oh, go ahead, JC.
Donna, I found myself being 16 in a high school in a volleyball game and being on the winning team and feeling that it was wrong. I didn't know then what I meant by wrong. Today I realized it's because I didn't believe that by winning by points, our team was better than the other team. But I didn't hear anybody saying that kind of thing. I saw them looking very dejected and I thought, there's just something wrong with this. And then as you continue to talk, I realized I've always been a winner. And that doesn't work unless I let go of everything that's expected and just be there with other people. I don't know. My 16, 17, 18-year-old was definitely saying, oh, you have something to say to me, because I don't believe that competition is 100% good thing. And I don't have any better answer for it today than that, except that what you may have offered me. So thank you.
Yes, we've grown up with competition. It has been most important thing in our sports, in business, in even looks and everything. And this is one of the things, to me personally, that has really caused a lot of separation. And the emphasis being so much on that has pulled us away from having a game that, you just enjoyed being together and playing the game.
Yeah.
And not focusing so much on the points, like you said, JC. And that's a changing, that's that thinking upside down that we talk about sometimes, changing our attitude and how we look at those things. I don't think there's anything wrong with playing a game, but what is your purpose, your focus, and all that in doing that? And it really has been focused on competition, which has caused a lot of problems in a lot of areas in our lives. So yeah, that was a great insight you got.
Julianne wanted to get in.
Yes,
You are.
Donna, I agree with your recent comment versus about competition. There are cultures that have never been competitive. One of those is the Dine. And 100 years, boarding schools and so forth have had an extreme problem trying to get the kids to play competitive sports. They don't know how. Their culture is not competitive. It's cooperative. And I think finally the educators just gave up and said, we can't do this. And what a lovely model to fully incorporate cooperation into your culture. The second thing is, I'm always up for your sermons, Donna. I love anything that talks about shifting consciousness, radical love, gratitude, forgiveness. But it's very difficult to put those into practice every single moment of every single day. Yep. And while I can meditate upon those concepts daily, just throw a situation at me and I'm liable to fail miserably. So give us some tips on how to handle challenging situations.
Okay. I do that with you every day also. When those things come to us, and just like you said, I failed miserably. And I can say, well, I didn't handle that like I would have really liked to handle that. Right there is what Barbara calls an evolutionary driver. Boom, you realized it, you understood it, and that's the driver that will, maybe the next time you will choose a little differently. But that's the process. And in that process, we must really, really understand we cannot put ourselves down. Okay, I did this time. Next time, I'm going to choose to be a little more understanding, or whatever it is. And that's the learning, that's the growing. And if you had absolutely no challenges, or what you called failures, to respond like you want to, then where's the growth process, So I actually could say, be thankful for those things, just like the people that push your button. They are the people in front of you that are going to help you look at yourself and learn about yourself. So why did that upset me? And then you start asking yourself those questions. So actually, I think that's, you're in the process, and it's good. It's good. The thing that we need to do, though, is just keep being in the process and keep being very, very gentle with yourself as you're going through that process, because being hard on yourself is not going to help at all. It's not going to help anybody, especially you. So I think you're doing great.
Connie wanted to go next.
Where's Connie?
I'm right here.
You
Well, I thought it was kind of ironic this part of your service talking about, you know, cooperation and not being competitive. And here at Super Bowl Sunday, think about energy millions and millions of people are putting out into the universe today. And I would not say that is probably cooperative or compassionate. So I thought that was kind of ironic. The other thing I thought about was in school and in science, how many times we talked about survival of the fittest. And I think we grew up in that era of teaching. And I think that does affect our feelings about sports and things like that, because that's kind of the time that we grew up in, with that scientific information about evolution being survival of the fittest. And so I think that gives us a hurdle to try and get over that kind of thinking, applying it to this kind of thinking. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yes, and when we're socialized for so many years about those kind of things, it's not going to turn over overnight. But how many people are now looking towards cooperation instead of competition? So we're in that process of shifting right now. And that's what's exciting to me, because more and more people, and you hear it more and more from our spiritual leaders and other people who come to the forefront and discuss things, that, excuse me, cooperation. So we went through the competition era. Now we're moving more into the cooperation era, that's evolutionary in itself. I just read this morning Amanda Gorman's poem that she wrote at the inauguration. And this is a young Black woman whose wisdom is very deep. If you read her poem, you may have listened to it, but to go back over the words, she's amazing. And she's very young. And, you know, all of that stuff is moving through our young children. And so it's not to look back at that competitive stage. It's just, okay, we went through that doesn't work, so let's go through this, and then move towards that. It's all about moving towards not making judgments about what we did in the past. We just say, okay, that didn't work. So let's move forward.
Well, and yeah, and I think that there's something noble about when we look to the past, keeping what helps, right, and trying to transcend or discard what doesn't. You know, in all of this talk about competition, I think there is a definite difference between the way that men and women look at the subject of competition. Competition in males is hundreds of millions of years old, and you know, and that stays with us. I am a big fan of Muay Thai, which is Thai kickboxing. And it is quite possibly one of the bloodiest and most violent competitive sports. But what's interesting about Muay Thai is how the winner reacts towards the loser in the bout. The winner will absolutely submit himself and bow on the ground with his face to the mat in reverence to the person who lost, because there's this idea that you have learned something, that they have both battled it out. The better person won, meaning the person who trained more, the stronger person, but in that process, you learned something about yourself, and it was your opponent that taught you that thing. So I hope that we won't throw out the idea of competition completely, because I would hate to lose the beauty that is that.
And that's what I was saying, you know, there's nothing wrong with sports and all of that, but it's that consciousness when you're doing it. You know, if you go into that with, I'm better than you, ha, 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 you're the loser, you know, that's a consciousness.
And that's
and so to
right?
go into it like you did with respect, you know, to honor the process, that's entirely different to me.
Right.
You know.
Wholly agree. Totally agree. Let's see, Sharon. wanted to speak.
Oh, gee, so many things going through this head. Michael, I have a question first.
Oh.
So what is the name of the sport?
Muay Thai.
Muay?
Muay Thai. Thailand. It's Thailand's kickboxing. It's like,
Okay.
yeah.
Is the point just to have a sparring match or to draw blood or kill?
I don't know how many people have died from it. It is bloody for sure. Yeah. You know, things are broken in the process. I don't think many people have died, but it is to test yourself. It is to test your strength and skill and stamina. So I don't know.
Okay. I had so many thoughts during listening to Donna's sermon.
Mhm.
And I really was struck immediately about the competition because I basically have not been a competitive person. And in some instances, that has been detrimental to myself. So I'm trying to figure out a balance here, moving forward for myself. And it brought me to a situation I have intentionally placed myself recently because there's so much guidance on allow yourself to be attracted to people who reinforce you and build you up. So that more or less allows yourself to be cloistered. Whereas if you're listening and trying to learn communication skills, you need to put yourself in a position where you are with other people who do not put blanket approval on what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can hone your listening skills and it can be a give and take situation. Because if you place someone else in a box, it limits their personal growth. And putting labels on a person puts the person in a box.
Mm-hmm.
All of these are judgments, which are projections of ourselves, as Donna pointed out. So here is my challenge, Donna. Can you help me with a role play, perhaps, for how we do this around political, racial, or religious spiritual dialogue? Case in point, when I'm having this conversation with people not like-minded, I feel like I need to say, well, my viewpoint is blah, 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 rather than using the questioning approach to find out more about where their thinking is.
So you're feeling like you have to express your opinion?
Or defend myself because I'm feeling attacked because I differ.
It's very interesting because I had an experience this weekend and this feeling of being attacked came up in me. And what I found when I processed that, it was the attack on me, which wasn't really an attack on me, but I took it that way, was because of this feeling of I'm not good enough. Because I've always had this thing about I have to do everything perfectly, you know, it has to be done well. And this interchange attacked my sense of I do everything well, you know. So it was absolutely totally within me is what I'm saying. And so if you, and that's another thing, when you feel like you have to defend yourself and that you're being attacked, just like this weekend, that interchange taught me a whole lot about myself once I processed it. Like I was saying, the people who push your buttons that, you know, say things that just maybe just make you feel inside like, how could they say those kind of things? They're pushing your buttons to help you grow. And so anytime that you feel like you have to defend yourself, ask yourself, why? Why do I have to defend myself? I know what I believe, and I believe that it makes me feel good inside. And then be willing to just listen. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to defend yourself. You really don't. As long as you are strong within you and you know within you. And then just allow the others to express what they what they believe. And a lot of times it's totally opposite of what you believe. But there's something about listening, just listening. You don't have to always respond. You can just listen. And that's something I've learned, not that I do it every time, this is a process, but what I have learned is that just allow them to express their feelings, period. You don't have to, counter with your opinion or do anything, just allow it and be okay with that.
What if you're directly asked questions? You're not allowed to just listen.
Well, then express your heart, your beliefs, not in a way that would attack theirs, to say, this is how I look at this situation or whatever it is. Just be honest with yourself. And another thing is, you cannot determine what their reaction is going to be, but you have to let it whatever it is, and just stay within your strength. And that's the best you can do. Yeah. Just be really, really strong with you. And you don't have to defend yourself. Just be there.
Well, when I realize I'm defending myself is when I think, okay, something's not right with how I'm speaking. No, there's something about my feeling that's not moving in a positive direction because I feel like I need to defend.
Mm-hmm.
How to have conversations, maybe there's a lot of AEOs going on, and that might be good practice for people. If you're interested in these kinds of things, I host a weekly conversation. Sharon, I don't want you to feel cut off, but there's a lot of people who want to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And Sharon, you can always, call me. We can talk more.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get in line after everybody else?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Lurley wanted to go next.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the Zoom meetings, and it's good for me to be exposed to intellectual thinkers, because I don't consider myself one. But so I wanted to just appreciate or tell Donna how much I appreciated her opening joke. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Throw tomatoes then.
Yeah.
No, it was awesome. Thank you.
Well, I thought it was hilarious, but when you said going to get tomatoes, I thought you were talking about making a BLT.
Good one, Michael. Yeah.
No, that's honest.
I do too.
Yeah, what a thought.
You're too intellectual, Michael.
No. Kim and then Ann.
Well, on the sports and I was raised as an Adventist, and I went to all Adventist schools, and we didn't really believe in competitive sports per se with other schools and stuff. We did it within our own school to learn how to get along with each other when you're doing it. But we didn't really believe in doing total competitive sports because it defers to all the other things you need to learn. So that's why I got out of in competitive sports. And I wasn't very good at sports, so I didn't care. But what I got out of the sermon was that you were saying about how you need to love yourself. And I have really issues with loving myself. I look in the mirror and think, ew. So, since I've been going back to church, I've come to realize that even though I don't like myself as much, that God loves me just the way I am. And I need to listen to him more and start liking myself because he likes me. So, and he's the one that created me. So I have to think more in that line.
Yes,
So.
you are. Yeah, you're perfect the way you are. And there was when I was training in the Taizé, there was a story, a true story about a woman who was in a wheelchair and hated herself and just wanted to die. And someone helped her change that all around by saying, all you need to do is love yourself. And she said, I can't. And she said, try to love your little finger. So she did. She started with her little finger, and she actually began to love her little finger. And so, to make a very long story short, eventually she loved herself so much that her disease, which had put her in a wheelchair, which they said she would always be in a wheelchair, went away, and she became healthy, normal. And it was all about loving herself. And that's what Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me, is all about. Okay, it's loving yourself. And we have been so programmed in this world that you're not pretty if you don't look this way, weigh this much, blah, blah, blah. And it has caused a lot of, I'm going to say, damage to our souls. You're beautiful. You're absolutely gorgeous. I mean, just the fact that you're a divine creation. I mean, that's the ultimate. And that's wonderful. So be grateful for that. So look in the mirror. It took me 2 years, but I looked in the mirror every morning and said, I love you, Donna. And then after 2 years, one day I did it and I thought, wow, I really do. You know, so it might be a process, but start it. It's so rewarding. So rewarding. And I love you. I love you just the way you look, just the way you are.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Donna, are you familiar with a motivational speaker, Nick? I think it's Vujicic. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's very tied to what we were talking about. Let me just share the screen real quick because this guy is absolutely worth looking up.
Oh, yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, he's wonderful.
Yeah, he's an extraordinary speaker. Nick, I have no idea how to pronounce his name, but
I know his, yeah.
Vujicic, I think. Anyway, if you have time, his videos are on YouTube and are absolutely worth watching. So,
yes, and in fact, he goes around to high schools, and there are videos showing him at these high schools. And after it's over, these young people are coming up crying and hugging him because he's so motivational and he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah. And also there's a book out by Camille Ravikant called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And it's a very short read, but it's a very good book. So sorry, moderator privilege in there to interject.
No, that's great. That's great.
And Claire wanted to go next.
I had 2 comments for you. One's a question. Donna, I want to thank you first because when you were talking about radical forgiveness and forgiving the projections we put onto other people, I'm, as you know, in the throes of really getting into what's going on with me and my siblings and the lack of there being any sibling interaction. And there have been a lot of stuff that did happen. And I wrote down yesterday, when the second time of the 3 I watched your sermon, can I forgive a traumatized child? And I realized that every time my siblings and I hurt each other, and these hurts that I've been carrying for so many years are, number one, my own projections of my trauma on them, but also they were traumatized children when they did this. Gee, it's a whole lot easier forgiving a traumatized child when I can see my sister like that than a very, sour and angry and defeated 60-year-old. So I want to thank you for that. That really has been very, very helpful to me. But I came up with a question, Donna, and it has nothing to do with what we've talked about so far. So I hope it's okay that that I can change the subject still within the sermon. And that was when you were talking about the belief in lack. And I believe that myself, that the belief in lack will lead to lack and lead to want, and that want comes from a belief in lack. But I was struck as you were talking, if we really shouldn't believe in lack because there won't be lack, or however you want to put that, where do we get words like depletion? How can we even say words like depletion? If there, it just kind of hit me as that's the part I have sometimes with lack is we are going to run out of things like oil. I suppose it has to do with stewardship, possibly.
Mhm.
But just how can those two things coexist? A belief in lack and a belief in depletion of natural resources.
It is because we believe in lack that we have depleted our resources. We've used them, we grab them because I believe in lack, so I have to get mine first over you. This belief has created this mess instead of sharing, replenishing and managing this, yes, finite world. I mean, it's obvious. We have a world and it's this big, and we grow this many trees on it, whatever. And so with that consciousness of lack, we've actually created the lack. Okay, if we had a consciousness of abundance, then that consciousness would make sure that we take care of Mother Earth because it is our home. And
that's what I just wrote down, Donna, that a belief in lack will lead to depletion, but not believing in lack will lead to repletion, but you replete instead of deplete.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a whole different consciousness. You're taking care of it, just like you would take care of your baby,
Yes, but my words were getting in my way. Thank you.
Well,
yeah.
I would just say to the congregation that you pay by the epiphany.
Yeah.
Martha.
Okay, that's great.
I love it.
Yeah. Martha, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. All right. Well, so I had kind of a curious thought, and it's that so much of what you talk about, Donna, is the science of self-realization, right? And the cynic in me would say, well, isn't that a little self-centered? That if we're always taking care of ourselves, look, the world has all of these problems that we need to solve, but if we're always concentrating on our own self-well-being, it's like we'll never get to the problems of the world.
The world is a reflection of our consciousness.
I agree.
And right now, our collective consciousness is reflecting the fear that we are feeling as a collection, okay, a collective. And how do we change that? We have to do it from within ourselves first. So that is why taking care of yourself, managing your consciousness, and doing the things that are going to help you raise your consciousness to become a universal human is going to be reflected out into that collective. And that is how you're going to help the world, by being, just like Gandhi says, being the change you want to see. You have to start with yourself. I mean, you have to, because how can you change the world into a loving world if you don't even love yourself or others? You can't. That's impossible.
Right.
And so that's why being that universal human that I was talking about is so important. And you have to understand too that when you raise your consciousness, you are doing something that is so powerful, just like in our meditation, sending that, that love out, broadcasting that love. Every time you do that, you have to understand that it is so powerful. And it might seem like, well, how can I be powerful? How can I affect? We're one. When you're sending that out, you are affecting everything, everything. And so the more that does that, the more universal humans that do that, whoop, we're going to fall right into a universal humanity. And that's going to be our norm, caring for each other. So it has to start with you. It is not selfish in my book. It is absolutely necessary.
Very well put. I couldn't have said it better myself. And if I can take this opportunity to plug, I just this week did an interview with Reverend Bonnie Anderson, which I hope to have up later today or Monday, where we talk about these very issues. And you and her, I don't have to tell the group that are much on the same page when it comes to, healing the self, thereby healing the world.
Yes.
Connie wanted to get in.
Good, because I'm going to throw a little wrench in. I want to point out my experience with exchange students and also programs that were in schools where kids had to have a certain number of hours where they volunteered. And I found this was required in some high schools. I found over and over again with those kids where they expressed they were clueless. They were clueless about the needs of other people, that experience, which was required, actually made them more aware of themselves, the selfishness or whatever. So I don't think the process always has to be that we come enlightened ourselves, and then we go do good. I think oftentimes, and I think the fires around Douglas County was a good example of people not even thinking, but stepping out and doing a good act. And then afterwards, maybe months afterwards, realize how that made them feel. That's my little input.
And that's exactly right. I mean, how are we going to learn about ourselves? Through our experiences, through our relationships. And that's the whole process, is through that stuff. So when we do all of these things and then later we say, wow, you glean something from them. And that's the process, Connie. You don't just become, well, in my opinion, we're already all enlightened already. We've forgotten. So when we awaken to that, we do that awakening as that process, like you were describing. So we're all on this, but the more we do this, the more that we can express those things out into the world and change that consciousness, raise it. So yeah, I think those are important things that, those experiences are learning experiences, just like that, the people in front of you push your buttons. And who's going to say, oh, they're my greatest teacher? Well, they are. But who's going to say that, But then later down the road, you might think, wow, that experience has taught me this. And it might not be right during, and in fact, most of the time, it's not during the event itself. It's later on. And you go, wow, if that hadn't happened, I would have been here, or that taught me how to forgive. There's lots of things that happen. So those things are what she calls evolutionary drivers. I love those two words. So, yeah.
JC wanted to go next.
Well, even before listening to your beautiful sentiments this morning, Donna, I read in the paper about some people in our town. I believe they all in that article belong to a church, but they have what's called an under the bridge ministry.
Mhm.
And the pictures were of people younger than I taking camping supplies and food and things people would need who are trying to live in a tent or even without a tent, wrapped up in a, well, anyway. And I thought to myself, yes, I have now had 1/2 of a vaccination series,
Mhm.
but I'm not
There yet.
protected completely. I can't go under the bridge. But I said, I have enough to share some money with them. They're all buying these things for giving to these people. And so then I put my mind to how do I let them know that I want to do that? And, you know, it wasn't hard. I figured it out pretty fast. But I believe that I drive past those people over there when I go on the parkway. There's these big tents that they're trying to survive this winter in these tents. And so I feel, okay, I can do something for these people that I actually see and understand that they're in hardship. So I think that counts. And it
Mhm.
comes back to my sense of myself, even as a child, of having so much that I've almost kept away from being grateful, as if maybe more than my share. So I'm going to go back to being grateful. I mean, I'm going to start being grateful, and in being grateful, be able to share with them.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And when you're grateful, you're going to get more to share.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's how it works. No, I can't. Just a very quick story. When I started at Unity, I had this attitude that the churches were just wanting money from you, and they had so much money, and they're rich, and they did this and did that, but they just kept drawing money from you, and I wasn't very happy with that. Well, once they elected me as their minister, I had to look at that. So what I did was I started, actually it ended up to be almost 25% of my income. I was tithing. What was very interesting was I always still had enough money. It didn't matter how much I ended up tithing. I still had everything I needed. And so I ended up giving more and more, and it ended up about 25% I gave right back to the church. I always had everything I needed, and I thought, how does that work? but it worked. It just worked. It worked.
Yeah. Well, so I would ask, how deeply did you believe in what you were doing at the church?
Yes, see, the church changed my whole attitude about that, because see, I haven't gone to church a lot. Unity was my first real, get into the church and see what's going on here. So I had these ideas of the, and I'm gonna just these bigger churches, all of them really Catholic, the Baptist and all these churches, they just seem to have so much money, and there was all of their subjects were poor, that was my attitude. And then I got into a church and realized, that's not necessarily true, and that wasn't why you tithe anyway, so it changed my whole attitude about it. I was sharing is what I was doing. And again, everything I was like, wow, I had enough for everything. It was great.
That's awesome. Laleen had something to, and then Martha.
I wanted to share a little piece of my childhood, which is real relevant to what we're talking about now. When I was really little, we were really poor, and we moved from Los Angeles, ran away from my father to Kansas City. We lived in an integrated neighborhood and on welfare. And my younger sister was dying of lupus, so my mother was gone a lot. And the neighbors, all Black, watched out for me. Like I was fed anywhere, anybody's house that I went into was watched for, and all the mothers did that. We used to think they had eyes everywhere because we didn't
Yeah.
realize, you know, they looked out the windows. And then my family moved to a federal government housing project, a brand new one. And they took the 500 poorest families and they put us all in there, and we were all on welfare. And people had different ways of handling things when you get a welfare check once a month at the beginning of the month. And my mother knew about budgeting, but a lot of families didn't. They'd run out to the grocery store and they would spend absolutely everything in the beginning of the month and come home, you know, with baskets and baskets of food. And while we lived there, Mom said we couldn't ever invite children into the house, especially at a meal time. And that was real hard for me to understand. And so she had to just sit down and explain how money, you know, might work, that it wasn't about the giving, it wasn't about anything else, but it was about really needing to take care of ourselves and at the same time still care for other people. Well, by that time, you know, I think I was 9 or 10. And so I was old enough to understand that. Then I realized, you know, a little later that I had to draw upon, right, which is, I think, why I often encourage folks when they're talking to go back to childhood. I had enough to draw on to look at both ends of that. You know, what it feels like to have all the moms in the world looking out for you, and what it feels like to have to withhold and not be able to give at a really, really early age. And so when I think about love and gratitude and all of the things that Donna talked about, memories like that come up for me. And the beauty of the experience for me today, maybe it's my age, is the learning, is the how I look back on them and what I draw, you know, from them. And I realized that my journey, Donna, to loving myself included also years of looking in a mirror, but it was the looking inward for that child who needed to understand the full breadth of love, and that no one could give that to her except me, because I was the only one that knew absolutely every moment of her daily experience and what she needed and what she got and what she didn't get. And that I unconditionally could understand all of that and truly love her and tell her what a beautiful child she is, was, still is, and that none of that had anything to do with her being unlovable.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
So that's how I learned really about love and gratitude.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Martha had something to say.
Well, this goes back to what Connie was talking about, her remembering students doing volunteer things. I've often thought that awareness of people starts very young. We as shapers of little minds in school are there very much to do that. But I was wondering, and I've often wondered, how would it look as if, you know, we have so many young people at 18 that graduate and not knowing where they're going. And then they're supposed to do something, especially if you're a kid on SSI because you're a ward of the state, you're cut off, period, at 18. And I've often wondered if we somehow as a country could develop a program by which children could sign up. You know, remember the Peace Corps and the successes of that. And then we've got AmeriCorps kids that come to town. I wish we could have some kind of a thing that gives that opportunity more emphasis that this is a thing to do, and make it a part of our overall plan of awareness. And if you don't have awareness of other things, I mean, we often live in these, and especially now with our COVID thing, we so live in our little worlds, and there's a lot of children that have no clue, and they become adults with no clue. They don't know really what has happened with history. They don't know about other cultures. They don't know about other ways of doing things. I just think it would lead that kind of approach, if we could figure out some way we could present this, that it would be a really good way as we as a country could move forward to help others. That's my 3 cents, maybe a quarter, I don't know, 10.
Yeah, and my vision is as we move into the heart, that we will be now looking at human beings instead of
Yeah.
prophets and all that. We'll be looking at human beings. We'll be looking at our children. We'll be teaching them how beautiful they are.
Yeah.
Instead of,
Human doings. Human being, not you human doing.
Yeah. Right. But, be seen but not heard kind of attitude, instead listening to them and, cherishing them. And that's what's going to change. That's going to be a big part of our moving forward, our children. We've just not. And again, this is not about a judgment. It's just that we're learning different now. We're learning different now.
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah.
So we've got just a couple minutes left. It would be great if somebody who hasn't spoken feels like giving us. Joanne, you want to?
I will. World War II, we became achievers. We were the best in everything, in science and math. Young men got to go to college with the GI Bill, and we were definitely moving on, and it was great. We got military, we could buy our own homes, we were succeeding, and then Vietnam came. And we were challenged in our thinking, and it divided us in many ways. I remember my father in the 50s and 60s used to play cards, and he was the only Englishman, and the other 5 guys were Italian. And my father won many, many times and was very good at cards. And I watched him one day, and he looked at me and he said, "Joanne," he said, "it's nice to win. It's enjoyable. I like winning the money, but that's not important if you win or lose. It's how you treat the other person." And I really believe in that. And I believe Martha, more than I would actually volunteer to help in a Peace Corps for our children, because that's how they're going to learn.
Yeah. Lois, did you ever get to speak? I know you started in the beginning.
She's muted.
You're muted.
I just asked her to unmute.
Oh, okay.
Thank you to Donna. Yes, I really liked the part of radical gratitude. I think about the life that we live, and we have been so blessed, especially living here in Oregon. But I was flashing too on competition in sports, and I remember a clip that went viral showing a first and second place winners of a race. Well, the first place winner tripped, and the second place runner picked him up and walked him across the finish line, showing compassion. And they asked him why he did that. He said, because he was clearly the winner. He deserved it. And I love it. About your radical forgiveness, yes, it's something I work on all the time. And I think about when I finally accomplish it, how good it makes me feel inside. Yeah, it's part of being whole. I really appreciate hearing your words about it. Radical love comes when all these other things have happened, the forgiveness and the gratitude and the love for others. And I believe you cannot love others until you love yourself. That's truly right.
Yeah,
Thank you for a wonderful sermon. It really is.
Mhm.
thank you. It was fun. I think they're fun.
I listened to it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we actually had more of an audience, in the church when we recorded this one, and I
I
think
know.
I think it makes a difference. I do,
Yeah, but I have to tell you, I said the joke and they went on and I had to stop and start over. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do the joke again so you have to laugh again.
It was powerful, Donna, when you did it over.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Totally not on the topic.
Okay, we got about 2 minutes.
I noticed the chalice was a bit wobbly.
Oh,
Who was under there holding that up?
Michael,
didn't
would you
notice
please
that.
answer that?
Yeah. I didn't notice that myself, but yes, the chalice wick is a continual headache. So, we will pray to the chalice gods that we can have a wick situation that
That needs to be fixed. And it's my job to do that.
Well, actually, I'm the one that presented that
yeah
part of the chalice.
Yeah.
I'll go see if I can fix it.
Well, everyone, this has been Connie. Oh wow, man, you
Connie's got her
all
hand
like
going.
I've had my hand up.
Yes,
Yeah.
go for it.
I wanted to show this because it's an interview with Michelle Obama with Amanda Gorman. So
Wow.
Whoa.
it's the recent Time magazine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I wanted to share that, and I also wanted to say to all of us, and Michael included,
Yes.
when we say something about an author or a book, it would be really nice if we gave that title slowly. Like, for example, Michael, you talked about a Michael that's a speaker, but I couldn't get his last name. So I would like to ask all of us in the future, if we mention a book or an author, somebody that we either spell the name or say it very slowly.
If you rewatch the discussion when I'm talking about him, I went to the Google page and it had his name highlighted. So if you just go to that part of the video,
I will.
Yeah.
And I'm on my phone though also. So I tried to do that, but that was so anyway.
Yeah, well,
that's good.
My friends, we are at our end. I want to thank Reverend Donna for a very powerful sermon, and this was a wonderful discussion. I feel very. I'm gonna go lift it up, right? So I hope you have a great Sunday. Take care, everyone.
Everybody, I love you.